Welcome, everybody, to Dive Deep. I'm your new host, Pastor Kyle Roberts. I'm the pastor of spiritual formation here at Christ Wesleyan Church. And our goal here at Christ Wesleyan Church is transformation. Our current series, All In, discusses how we, the church, can truly be all in for Jesus. We are excited for you to hear Pastor Ryan's thoughts about the sermon from this past weekend. Pastor Ryan, thank you so much for joining us today.
It's my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
It's great to have you here. So in order to start out, I just want to ask you, can you tell us more about your sermon for those who may not have heard it on Sunday?
Yeah, I originally had titled the sermon Heaven and Hell, and knew that we were going to be talking about those two places and how that would spur us on then to be more intentional with the mission of the gospel as the series goes forward. But I changed that title in the last week to Heaven or Hell because the choice is really what I wanted to emphasize. Mm-hmm. There's definitely a lot of sermons, and we've had them, and they're wonderful, describing the two places and helping to lay out some of the, all of the biblical references to those places, and that's good, but I wanted to focus this time more on the choice that somebody has, that each of us has, and really wanted then to direct the sermon primarily to the believer, to the church, to say there is a choice and we have to really get on fire for helping people come to that decision moment because the time is really running short. And so that was really what I wanted to accomplish, was to empower the church, to empower the laity, really, which I addressed at the end of the second service, that we're all ministers of the gospel, regardless if we're a pastor or not. So that was really my heart and intention for the sermon, and Lord willing, that was accomplished.
Well, it was definitely accomplished in my own life. I know that as you were giving the sermon and giving the standing at the end of it, saying, if you are going to go into other people's lives and really proclaim the message of Jesus, that was convicting in my own heart, because there are family members in this area that I have that I've really loved dearly, but at the same time, I haven't really thought about evangelizing to them. So I was one of those people that stood up, because all that would come to my mind were those images of my family members. Yeah. And I think that's what you were trying to get across to everybody.
Absolutely.
There, really.
I was convicted even Saturday night. I have an uncle and their family who doesn't know Christ. And I had watched the video of my dream one last time that we were going to share. And I just got welled up with tears because I thought, goodness, they don't know Christ. And so I actually sent them a text Saturday night and gave them links to church online, hoping that they would perhaps tune in. I'm not sure if they did that, but it was just a reminder again, like, what do I need to do tonight, because we don't know if we have tomorrow.
And ultimately, we're the ones who sow the seeds. We don't necessarily reap the harvest right away.
Right.
But continually sowing those seeds as a farmer does, God is ultimately the one who grows those and causes the sun to shine down on them, to rain to come over them. He's the one who grows it, and then we can see the harvest later, even if we're not even here.
We just need to be faithful with that mission, with that when God prompts you, share, and be attentive to that voice. I think many times that we can tune him out with excuses of, well, I'm not sure that was God, but I'm really getting to be an advocate for those subtle promptings that God gives. It might just not be this random feeling that you have. It might actually be God trying to prompt an action in my life and really getting to the point where I'm obedient to those things.
So let's talk a little bit about that dream that you had and that you talked about in the midst of the sermon. That dream was so vivid and memorable. What do you remember feeling like before you had this dream, and how you were changed afterwards?
Yeah, we were in our first year of marriage, Amanda and I. We were still in school at Indiana Wesleyan. We got married that summer before our senior year. And we were in a little apartment above a vacuum cleaner store that we rented from one of our professors. And
that apartment sounds like it sucks.
It was nice.
Yeah.
It took me a second there.
Sorry.
It did, but it really did. Yeah, not just a pun.
Anyways.
But it was actually during a nap, which was different. So, and I'm not I don't take a lot of naps, which is, you know, interesting. I tend to be one of those people who, if I'm going to nap, it's going to be like 3 or 4 hours. So I have to
Me
plan
too.
for my naps, you know, because they're going to take some time. But I remember just being distinctly like, I'm going to take a nap this afternoon. And I laid down in our apartment, and I thought it was just, you know, a normal thing. But I really do believe that even just that decision to do that was ordained by God, because you know, then what followed, you know, when I woke up, I had never quite experienced that before, whereas though, you know, somebody snapped as though I'd been, you know, being hypnotized or something, you know, it just, I awoke and I was completely awake, you know, I didn't feel sleepy, I didn't feel groggy. And I woke with the complete knowledge of the dream that I had, you know, the complete memory of it, complete visual. I actually grabbed a tablet quick and began to sketch some of the images because I was worried I would forget them. And so I actually sketched out each of the scenes, and then I called my pastor at the time at the church where I was working in Indiana, and I shared the dream with him, and I said, I really feel as though I'm supposed to do something with this, because it felt a whole lot more like a vision than it did a dream. And he said, you definitely should. You know, I have theater background, and so I was thinking, is there something with theater that I'm supposed to do with this? And that the verdict's still out on that. I'm not sure. There might be. We've talked about that a couple times, Amanda and I. But I knew that I was supposed to do something with that dream. And to be honest, I've shared it with a number of individuals, but this is the first time I've shared it publicly like that. So we'll see how God continues to want to use that. But it definitely was a very clear command that I was supposed to do something with that. And I've been fleshing that out for 15 years of what God wanted to do. So this may be the most significant time so far that I've utilized it.
For those of you who haven't heard about Pastor Ryan's dream, you can go onto our website, cwc.life, and look for the sermon notes that are there on the first page. You'll also be able to find a video link that has the sermon there. At the very beginning of the sermon, he goes in depth into this dream. So for those of you who may not have heard it, that's where you can find it. And thank you again for sharing, Ryan. I really appreciate it. Yeah, let's move on to the topic of evangelism, which I know can be... It's a topic where a lot of Christians are told to do it all the time, but aren't necessarily told how, or it's not exemplified in their own life. And you had mentioned in your sermon that the way that you evangelize to others is through relational evangelism. Can you tell us more about what that means?
Yeah. My dad and mom both have an incredible passion for evangelism. Matter of fact, they've taught lots of evangelism classes over the years. At our former church, when I was just a little guy, my dad was doing street evangelism and teaching others to go out and share their faith. And even till this day, you know, talks about wanting to do more teaching and helping others. I think he said he's finding greater joy in helping others lead people to Christ, even than that joy of leading himself, you know, just to see that passion stir up in somebody else. But so evangelism's been big in my family. I think, though, however, my just seeing them do that and the boldness that they do that with, and you know, they'll talk to anybody, you know, stranger on the street, cold calls, as I say.
There was one time where your mom talked to somebody on a roller coaster when
they
were strapped in, right?
They were strapped in next to each other. It was kind of one of those like, ooh, I hope I made the right choice getting on this, you know, because it was a huge roller coaster. I forget where we were, Six Flags or something. And she looked at the guy sitting next to me and she said, man, I hope we make it off this thing. And he said, yeah, me too. And she said, boy, I'd hate to start this ride and not know Jesus. You know, she's already talking to him about her faith.
That's amazing.
So I really appreciate people that can do that. But my personality is much more one of, and I think a lot of people are, one of wanting to build a relationship over a little bit of time with that person to be able to have a platform to then share my faith. And there isn't a right or a wrong way necessarily, but I do think you have to utilize the personality that God's given you, because I'll reach some people that perhaps a cold call evangelist won't. And they'll reach some people that I won't. So that's the beauty of the body of Christ, is the difference in those personality types and the gifts that we bring. So, yeah, I would say certainly my heart is to have a relationship or a friendship even built with somebody, or at least a little bit of trust, then I can open that door. But I think that's the hesitation then, or the caution I would give to somebody who says they're relational, is that if you're going to build a relationship, make sure that at some point you get to that moment where you're talking to them about a decision for Christ. I think in the name of friendship, sometimes we hold back. We say, I don't want to make this uncomfortable. I don't want to hurt the relationship. But I always say, if you know a bus is headed for somebody and they're going to get hit, eventually the most loving thing you could do is pull them out of the way of that. And so, we just want to make sure that we're not letting evangelism get lost in the sea of the friendship that you've created.
Yeah, I appreciate that metaphor of the bus, because that is what's coming for somebody who doesn't know Christ,
Right.
whether it's from them rejecting him or whether it's from them just not knowing. So we who already know Christ and know this difference between heaven or hell, we have a responsibility to pull people out from that bus that's coming to hit them.
I remember a short video that I watched. I think I even used it in a sermon one time. If you know the magician's Penn and Teller, one of them was sharing an experience that he had after a show. Now he says that he's an atheist in the video. He said, but a man came up to him after one of his shows and gave him a Bible. And he said, I wasn't mad at that guy, even though I believed differently than him. But that man believed that, Jesus was the only way to my salvation. And he said, so I realized in that moment that if that man truly believed that, what he was doing was the most loving thing toward me that he could do. And he was acknowledging the fact, even as an atheist, that if you believe that Jesus is the only way and you don't tell people, and his question was then, how much do you have to hate somebody not to tell them? And I thought, wow, what an incredible thought, that we really do love people if we believe that Jesus is the only way and then tell them about it.
Yeah, that's such a weight to be able to bear in the midst of that. So I appreciate you taking the time to share. I'm also a relational evangelist. Going out and speaking on a soapbox in the street, that is just not my jam.
Yeah.
And me being generally more introverted, it terrifies me to meet new people. So one of the ways that I've been stretched here at the church is meeting so many people at once. And I know that it's important. I know that it's really important to evangelize to others. And even if you're introverted, even if you are terrified of people like me, this mission that God has given to us is so much more important than my own comfortability.
Yeah, that's good.
That we need to be on it. Because what did Jesus say in the Great Commission? Go and make disciples of all nations.
Unless you're introverted.
Unless you're introverted.
Yeah, no, he didn't
then
say
you're
that.
okay. No, he didn't say that.
Right, but you're right. You're right.
So even the disciples, look, they were just fishermen starting out, and not very successful fishermen until Jesus gave them a bunch of fish in their nets.
Yeah.
And then if you look in the book of Acts, after he had given them that Great Commission, all they could do was go and share the gospel, and nobody was going to stop them. So it's incredible to think of the courage that they had to have, but also how Jesus had transformed them over that whole period of time to form and shape them into disciple makers.
One of the things I said Sunday was that nobody can share your faith for you. It's your faith, so you have to share it. And so there are people that you're going to reach that nobody else will. And when you think about the fact that God is relying on you, now he doesn't have to. He could have done this a different way, but he's asking you and inviting you into this process and expecting that the ones that he's put in your circle, that you're going to be the change, you're going to be that catalyst to share with them. And it's incredible to think about the responsibility that's there. So somehow we have to take our personalities and adapt and come to that place where we say, okay, God, how do you want to use me? Who do you want me to share with? Who have you put in my path that might not be in anybody else's path? And if I don't do this, who's going to have to? And maybe nobody will. And so it's just the realization that the mission is huge and we've all been invited to it.
Well, thank you so much again, Pastor Ryan, for joining us here on the Dive Deep podcast. I appreciate you taking time out of your day to help us learn more about how we can be better evangelists, how we can better listen to God, and how in the midst of where we are going in our evangelism, always looking to God in the midst of that process and looking to see which choice are you going to make today, heaven or hell. So thank you so much for spending time with us today on CWC Dive Deep. The heart of this podcast is to bring about transformation and good spiritual discussion. Be sure to spread the word so that more people can benefit from this podcast, and we look forward to providing you with more great content in the weeks ahead. If you missed these past episodes, check those out at cwc.life/dive deep. Have a great week, everyone.